Anyone? I should see all hands. Anybody have children? Okay. Anybody ever helped raise a child? Anyone ever seen a birth, any birth, or been participating in that? Has anyone ever drawn anything, created any art? I know lots of artists are in the audience today, so I know that there's that type of creation. Anybody planted anything? Yes, we've planted things. How about invented something or fixed something? Yes, sewed something, there we go. Written anything, a poem, a song, a letter. Yes. But even if you haven't said yes to any of those things, you've still participated in the miracle of creation every day with what's going on up here, with your thoughts. And so my question is, do we really believe that? Okay, I see a lot of nodding. Do we fully get how it works? So if you're saying yes, 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 do you keep that in the forefront of your consciousness as you observe those thoughts? In the Science of Mind magazine in November of last year, there was an interview with Elizabeth Gilbert, and she says spirituality and creativity intertwine completely because they both have creation at their root. And then she goes on to explain that there's pretty much two different ways in our society that people think about creation. And one of the ways is that it is undynamic and finished. In other words, God created the world in those 7 days and it was done. Placed us here, we walk around on an already fully formed planet. Then the other idea about creation is that it is unfinished and that it's unfolding and expanding. And everything is happening in a very dynamic way, and you are a partner and a participant and a collaborator with creation. Now, in case you're wondering, Ernest Holmes believes in the latter form, and I think a lot of us do. I saw the heads nodding. We believe that creation is still evolving, still happening. And so I thought I'd find an example where Ernest Holmes mentioned that, and there were so many examples of where he talks about evolution, the evolved, and evolving, that it was hard to pick which one to read. So that is integral, I think, into what he was teaching and what it is that we've come to experience and to recognize about the creative process itself. So this is just one example of what he said. Evolution is the process, the way, the time, and the experience that transpires as thought, or intelligence, or idea, or contemplation. It passes from abstract being into concrete expression. Consequently, evolution is an effect of intelligence and not the cause of it. Evolution is not creating intelligence. Intelligence is projecting evolution. We do not deny the theory of evolution. We affirm its cause to be intelligence, operating as consciousness and law. That's pretty heady, but it's also pretty concise, I'd say, in regard to that idea that evolution is part of that process of what's going on for us. That creative process continues. And I believe that it's that evolution and that creative process that's happening within us that causes us to ask those questions about ourselves, like, why am I here? What's my individual purpose? And what's our humankind purpose for walking this planet? And as we ask those questions, we might answer with things like, well, I'm here to be of service. I'm here to help. I'm here to make the world a better place, whether it's through my music, my art, or just being me. And I think it's that belief that we have something to contribute and how we connect with that and see it evolving in our life that keeps us moving and inspired to vision. And now we have this larger vision of a world that works for everyone. And so as I thought about that vision, I then thought, well, if I said my purpose was to be of service and to help, is that even going to be needed in a world that works for everyone? Will they need spiritual counselors or therapists or people to feed the hungry? I don't know. I think the vision of a world that works for everyone is also evolving in regard to what it looks like and how it might outplay. And we know that as that evolution takes place, as we begin to visualize it more and more, it gets to take place more and more for us. So there are many theories, and there have been people throughout all of humankind that have created theories for how it is that we could best participate as human beings in this process, whether it's in different cultures or societies or different ways of organizing our society. And years ago, in 1993, somewhere around in there, I was living in Albuquerque, and about 3,000 Cuban refugees were brought into Albuquerque. And of those, 13 were deaf. And so I got to participate in their lives very intimately for many years. I learned some of their sign language, helped them to learn American Sign Language. I learned about their culture, what they were fleeing from, and what they expected when they got here, and how different it was than what they expected when they got here. And so I spent a lot of time working with them and helping them to adjust to this culture. So 2 weeks ago, when Obama ended up in Cuba, I was really interested because I wanted to see how this all played out. Having been so involved in the lives of several Cubans, I just wanted to see what was going to happen. And so as I was talking about this with Brenda, we realized that neither one of us could really define what the difference between communism and socialism was. I didn't have a grip on it enough to say exactly what that difference was. And I'm sharing this for a reason, so just hang in here with me. So I went online and I decided to look that up, because that's a system. They're both systems that have been put out there as ideals, as ways that humankind could interact. And I found a site called Investopedia.com. And on that site, it put out some definitions for us. And again, my purpose in sharing this with you is not to say whether their definition is correct or not, or which one is the best, but when I get to the end, I will be explaining why I'm sharing this with you. So hang in there. So communism and socialism are economic and political structures that promote equality and seek to eliminate social classes. Sometimes the two are used interchangeably, though they are quite different. And then they explain a little bit more. And then it says, in a communist society, everything is owned by the working class, and everyone works toward the same communal goal. There are no wealthy and poor classes. Instead, all are equal. Production from the community is distributed based upon need, not by effort or amount of work. And then it goes on to explain why that didn't work as a system in some different examples that are given here. Then it says, socialism shares similarities to communism, but to a lesser extreme. As in communism, equality is the main focus, and it goes on to then also explain why that hasn't worked in certain areas. And then it says that those two are very opposite to capitalism, with no private ownership and class equality. In capitalism, reward comes naturally, without limitation, to workers who exceed the normal minimums. When there is excess production, the owner can freely keep it, and he has no obligations to share his spoils with anyone. A capitalist environment facilitates competition, and the result is unlimited advancement and opportunity. That's the piece that struck me. That's the piece that I started contemplating. The idea that unlimited advancement and opportunity needs competition. And the reason that that struck me is because in the Prosperity Plus class right now, we're reading a book by Wallace Wattles. And in that book, he says that you must get rid of the thought of competition. That you are to create, not to compete for what is already created. And he goes on to explain that a little more, and he concludes in that paragraph. And you can have it without taking anything away from someone else. You are to become a creator, not a competitor. And then Ernest Holmes, in the Science of Mind text, Suppose one were treating his business and something within him should say. Now let me just explain the terminology. When he says someone is treating their business, he's talking about doing treatment work or praying about their business to try and enhance it and get it to grow. He says, so suppose you're doing that about your business, and all of a sudden the thought runs through your mind, there are too many people in this business. He says, he should handle the thought of competition at once. And again, that phrase, he should handle it at once, means to take it into your contemplation, to take it into your awareness and do something about it. Essentially, get rid of it. He says, instead, declare, there is no competition and no monopoly in my experience. He also says in another place in regard to supply, all good is now mine and is now manifest in my experience. I do not compete with anyone. For I am and remain forever myself. This self is united with all selves, but is always an individual and a unique self. And so what I know I've been reading and what I've been teaching for the last several years is that what we focus on is what grows, not what we compete about. And so I found it interesting that there's this idea out there that the only way to get excellence and productivity and advancement is through competition. We teach cooperation. And one of the things I also realized that was different is that instead of teaching equality in the sense that we are all the same, that we all have the same, or that we all look the same, we teach that we are all one. And think about the difference in those two concepts. When I think about the world being one, sometimes it's such a big idea for me. I have to bring it into a system that I know more personally, and that's the physical body system. I think of my body as one. It all works in congruence with each other. And yet there's different labels that we put on different parts. You know, the hands, the feet, the eyes, the nose, the mouth, and yet the whole thing is one. So it outpictures in a lot of variety and a lot of diversity, and yet it works together as one. And then, this is how my mind works, I started thinking, what would happen if my right hand started competing with my left hand? What if my right hand was trying to feed me and decided it had to feed me faster than the left hand started trying to feed me, and, you know, or I was trying to get dressed and my right hand wanted to dress me in one thing and my left hand thought this was better, and we had this little competition going on. So to me, when I think about a system of we're all one, I think about the body and how it works together. So on the broader scale of a world that works for everyone, a world made up of oneness throughout all of its creation, what does that look like? Can we have cooperation and still have a striving for excellence? Can we have cooperation and still have productivity and unlimited opportunity? And then what would that look like without competition? So think also about, does anybody here still like to play games and compete and see who can win? Anybody still? Yeah, I knew Nancy was going to raise her hand. Yes. Who likes to still play games and win? Who likes to be the best at something? Who likes to try and achieve the most they can at their work or maybe in what they're doing? Yeah. So there's many of us that still like that. There's something about being the best. So is there some way that we can be motivated to be our best without that being the best? And what does that look like? What motivates us if it's not competition? Inspiration. So as we contemplate our role in this creative process and think about and visualize a world that works for everyone, I think we should take a little detour. And Larry's helped me as we take this detour. And I wish Deb was here because she used to drive on this road. Skip, can you just pull the front lights down a little bit? He's got a picture for you. We're taking a detour. Anybody know where that is? On the 405 in LA? Yeah, Patty knows. See, all those little squares, I don't know if you can see real well, but those are cars. This story is about being in that. It's by Derek Rydell from this book, Emergence, that I picked up at the conference this year. So I'm going to read you a little story, and if you need the visual, just imagine yourself in the middle of this. And I just, a little notice as well, there's some language in here that you don't normally hear me use from the platform, but hopefully you can just go with the story. Okay, in another sweltering day on LA's 405 freeway, one of the busiest in the country, with bumper-to-bumper traffic covered by a layer of undulating heat waves creating a strange shimmering junkyard that stretched as far as the eyes could see. It was miserable, and it was a miserable sight, made all the more unbearable by the gasping air conditioner in my barely legal 1993 Camry that I had nearly driven into the ground. Where the hell are all these people going? Don't they have a life? I hated them all. And not just with a detached kind of contempt, I felt personally affronted by their existence. To say that I was in a bad way would be an understatement. I wanted to lay on the horn so hard, even though I knew it wouldn't do any good. It would have felt good. I started flipping through the radio stations, country, classical, oldies, indie. It was all noise. If I could just find the right song, I thought it would drown out all the noise in my head. And maybe, just maybe, I could endure this hell I was crawling through. I finally flicked off the radio in disgust and tried to breathe and regain my composure. I was so agitated, more than usual, more than I could remember being in a long time. I felt like I was losing it, and I didn't understand why. I considered all the inner work I'd been doing lately. Anybody been there? So I did what any self-respecting student of personal development should do when they find themselves on the verge of a nervous breakdown. I started singing Let It Be. But not in a Beatles kind of way. It was more like a battle cry, a frustrated incantation. I was trying to will myself into a better place. Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be. Let it be never sounded so angry or out of tune. I sang at the top of my lungs, feeling like an ass, but not giving a rip. I let myself go. I went operatic. I sang it like Freddie Mercury, then Elton John, then Bob Dylan. It was not a sound any human should have to ever subject themselves to. But it took me out of my head, out of my car, out of the sweltering heat, just for a moment. And then it happened, a sudden dramatic shift in my awareness. Where a moment before I had contemplated cranking the wheel, hitting the gas, with no concern for who I steamrolled over on my way out of this post-apocalyptic highway, now I was giddy with joy. I glanced out the windshield at the impossible gridlock. What had looked like a graveyard of lost souls now looked like a work of art. A masterpiece of metal sculpture glistening with a million points of light. I looked to my left at the car that had been my traveling companion on this journey through Dante's Inferno for the last mile and a half. The driver was staring at me like I was crazy. I gave him a wolfish Jack Nicholson grin. I felt awesome. So what do you think happened there? What moved this person who was sitting in the middle of that from feeling totally stuck and so angry and so frustrated to a place of feeling awesome? Well, he contemplated that, and that's part of what this book is about, is his process. But the first thing that Derek says he did is, I chose to take back control of my inner reality, to attempt to feel better regardless of the outer conditions, regardless of my mental and emotional momentum. So he just chose to take back his own inner reality. Ernest Holmes says in the book Love and Law, you will never demonstrate as long as you deal with the condition. We live in mind, and mind is fluent. And so the next thing he said that he did is I went out of my mind, literally. I let go, took my attention off my mental purgatory, and threw myself into the moment. In that space, a gap was created, and in that gap, the fruits of all the work I'd been doing were finally able to emerge. And I know a lot of us do a lot of work. And we want so badly to be able to shift our conditions. But the aha that I got as I read through that and as I thought about these questions this week is that it's not about doing all that work to change the outside conditions. It's not about making the 405 move faster, which at that point nobody can do. And it's not about having the perfect economic system out there or making everyone equal, whatever that means, especially not if it means the same. A world that works for everyone, I realized, is a world where everyone feels awesome no matter what the conditions are. Where we get to feel awesome no matter what's going on around us. Ernest Holmes says, "Nothing is real to us unless we make it real. Nothing can touch us unless we let it touch us. Refuse to have feelings hurt. Refuse to receive anyone's condemnation. In the independence of your own mentality, believe and feel that you are wonderful. This is not conceit. This is the truth." So we have, as we've heard so many times, what it takes within us. And we just allow that to emerge. We find a way to bring that out. No system out there, no matter how perfectly thought out, is going to bring to us that feeling of being awesome. The only place it comes from is inside. Now, you might then want to ask me, because after the last time I talked about something similar to this, I was asked, well, what about, all these things? So do I just sit there and look at all this stuff going on in the world, and do I turn myself into feeling awesome and just ignore everybody else's suffering? Is that what this is saying? I don't think so. I don't think that's what this is about either. We just spent a whole month looking at spiritual activism. And so think about the activity and where it takes place from. So if Derek had acted from his place of feeling really angry and frustrated, the action that he wanted to take was honking on that horn or stepping on the gas and just plowing over everybody. Think about the action that took place from his desire to shift his inner reality. He started singing. He was entertaining the guy in the car next to him at the very least. And I imagine someday maybe we'll hear that the entire 405 is singing Let It Be all together at once at 5 o'clock. Who knows? I also started thinking about how resolution to some of these kinds of gridlock. We have this kind of gridlock in our lives sometimes, where we feel that stuck and that frustrated. And so where those solutions come from certainly isn't out of feeling stuck, isn't out of the frustration and the anger. I think the possibility for resolution to stuckness is greater if we can shift our inner reality and move into that place of feeling awesome. So I have a feeling that as we go through life, as we continue moving through life and allowing our creative self and our inner self to evolve, there's always going to be things that could be improved. There's always going to be a way that things need to evolve. There's always going to be the ability to have something work more efficiently, where we could feel more joy, where we could have a greater opportunity. Because that's the nature of creation, and we're a part of that, right? There's always more evolving and moving us forward. And so I also agree with Ernest Holmes, and this again is out of the textbook, when he says, what we demonstrate today, and again that term demonstrate, he's talking about what we bring into our life. So if we've done a prayer, an affirmative prayer, we've done a treatment, and we want to demonstrate something in our life that shows up, whatever it is, whether we're talking about businesses or whatever. What we demonstrate today, tomorrow, and the next day is not as important as the tendency which our thought is taking. And he capitalized tendency which our thought is taking, the dominant attitude of our mind. If every day things are a little better, a little happier, a little more harmonious, a little more health-giving and joyous, if each day we are expressing more life, we are going in the right direction. So here at our center, we learn a lot of things. We get a lot of tools, like he was expressing and talking about. We have a lot of tools, and we get in a situation like this, and we're thinking, what is wrong with us? Why can't we just automatically go, everything's beautiful? So how do we use those tools? How do we bring them into place? There's always going to be things that are evolving. There's always walls that still need to be painted, the parapet that needs to be fixed. There's always going to be a new project to do, a new idea. So we, as a center, are always going to be evolving. And there's always going to be that person that you'll go, oh, after 20 years, and they're still saying things like that. And then, after 15 years, and I'm still thinking things about people who say things like that. We are still evolving. We're still moving into that place of our greater self, our higher expression. So whether I'm coloring here on Wednesday night and making pretty things, whether I'm doing it at home or doing artwork of any sort, whether I'm cooking a meal for my family or feeding the hungry, all of it is part of creation. And it's every thought that I have is me co-creating with Spirit. So the conditions might look the same. There's always that which needs to continue to evolve, which is continuing to evolve. And I might even choose to react the same or to act the same in those conditions. But as I reclaim and take back my own inner reality, something shifts. My intention shifts. And my motivation comes from that urge to create that's within me. It doesn't come from competing to be better than you. It comes from that place within me that wants to evolve, that wants to create. And that's how I realize that I am at all times consciously participating in the miracle of creation. And so it is.